Hi everybody, it's the morning of April the 20th. As you can see, I mowed in the hoopos today. I'm going to give you a little guided tour of what's happening in here, and then I plan to do some transplanting. I've got most of my peppers out here. I'm going to put those in and a few other things out of the house, but I'll give you a look at those. And it's, I'm not sure what the temperature is outside, probably 10 degrees by now. I think the last time I looked it was 9 degrees. But it's currently 23 in the hoopos in the shade. Since I brought the pepper plants out here, it has gone down to 3 or 4 degrees one night in here, but there hasn't been any danger of frost, and it's been up as high as 35 degrees in here on a sunny day. So I think that things are moving along, and I'm going to put my pepper plants and a few other things in the ground today. Well, this is the row of garlic that was planted in here last October. It's doing very well. I would say most of the plants are 10 inches tall or more. And if you remember a few videos ago, I planted parsnip seeds down the center, and they've come up very thickly. I had watched a couple of videos, I think English gardeners who were talking about the difficulty of germinating parsnip seeds. Maybe because their soil was too warm or something. Anyway, they talked about all these tricks of getting parsnips to germinate. Well, I just planted them in the soil, and of course we've had a lot of cool weather in here, and it only took the 21 days that it said on the package that it would take, so I've got thinning to do. And I don't think I mentioned previously my reason for planting parsnips with the garlic was on the seed packet. It said that that was a good companion planting. I think the idea is that the garlic, the smell of the garlic plants tricks the fly that lays the carrot and parsnip maggot on your parsnips and carrots. Don't look for that to be a problem inside the hoopos anyway, but I had the space and it looked like a good place to try it, so they're in there and up and growing. Peas are still doing very well. I don't know, tallest are maybe 5 or 6 inches tall, and they're probably on average about 4 inches tall. I keep thinking they should be a bit darker green. I don't know what to do about this. There's lots of compost in that soil, and as you might remember when I sowed the seeds, I put in an organic balanced fertilizer, 444, along with the volcanic rock dust glacial rock dust, whatever it's called, that I'm trying out this year for the first time. But I don't know, maybe it's just my imagination. They just look to me like the foliage should be a bit darker. The 2 romaine lettuce plants are still doing quite well. I haven't had to use the row cover anymore. They're growing on their own quite nicely. This is New Zealand spinach. I've wanted the seed for years and couldn't find it. I guess I mentioned in a previous video I was able to find some this winter. An old-time gardener here, a member of my family who passed away a number of years ago, used to grow New Zealand spinach, and I don't think I ever had any of it to eat, but he always told me how good it was, and it doesn't bolt or go to seed. From what I've been looking at on the internet about it, in places like New Zealand, tropical, subtropical, it's a perennial plant, so I presume it does eventually bloom, but in the first year it doesn't go to seed, and of course it won't overwinter here. It's doing the strangest thing. I wasn't aware that it did this, but it's sending out runners just like strawberry plants do. I haven't yet eaten any of the leaves. They're nice and fleshy and thick. I've only got 2 plants out here. I did save some seed yet that I could plant. The interesting thing about the seeds, each seed sent up a half dozen or more little seedlings. I just clipped off all except for one. I don't know if I could have divided them and planted them out separately or not, but the seed is quite a large seed, and evidently it's like a beet seed. It's not just one seed, it's a casing with a cluster of small seeds inside. But that's New Zealand spinach. And this is the winter boar kale that overwintered in here. I had a comment from somebody who has grown kale and had it overwinter before, and said that it's probably going to bolt and try to bloom. Well, that's exactly what it did. I pinched the larger blossom head off the top of this and ate it. It was quite tasty. But down in each one of the leaf axils is more blossoms starting to come up. One of the smaller ones, the one that the head of it didn't overwinter, but had some side shoots, I thought, well, maybe I'll take off all the side shoots from one, except one, and see what happens there. Well, that's also got blossoms starting to come on it, so I'll let these leaves get a bit bigger, and then I'll harvest them and have a meal, and I'll just pull these out. I already have some new seedlings started. I probably will start more for my charity plant sale coming up in June sometime here. I don't think I'll waste space and grow them inside the hoop house. I did this last fall, and they overwintered, but more hot weather crops that I'd like to grow in here, so the new ones will be planted out in the garden somewhere. Out in the gardens I had 2 or 3 of the sort of ornamental strawberry plants. They do produce an edible strawberry, but I think they're grown more for their pretty pink blossoms than anything else. And I dug them out of where they were because they frequently get overshadowed by other plants, and the slugs end up getting the berries. I brought them in here. It's just 3 of them, I guess. And they're all quite small yet, but I thought, well, I'll have a few early strawberries once they develop, and for my cereal or whatever. I've got, I think, 20 or 24 strawberry plants on order, and those will be planted outside in one of the beds, but I thought I'd have these 3 inside here. That's my strange kohlrabi that overwintered, sort of looking like a palm tree. All the foliage on top. So far it doesn't appear as though it's going to bolt and bloom, but that wouldn't surprise me. Anyway, it's not taking up much space, so I'm going to leave it for a while longer and see if it actually develops one of those little Sputniks. You got to be as old as I am to know what a Sputnik is. Next to it are the 2 kinds of radish that I planted a few weeks ago, or at least maybe 2 weeks ago, I guess. The 2 short rows on the right are a Chinese radish called April Cross, and the 2 rows on the left are just an ordinary red radish called Rebel. The Chinese radish is very similar, I think, to the Japanese daikon, and I think it's also the same plant that the Chinese refer to as a white turnip. It grows a long, cylindrical white radish or turnip, whatever you want to call it, but I've recently watched a video of a lady cooking with it, using it in a soup or whatever. So anyway, we'll see what happens with those later on in the summer, I guess. The red ones I think will probably develop and be picked quite quickly, but the white one, it says, will grow 16 inches long. And as I said before, not in here, the soil's not that deep. Just a little look at some of the things that I'm going to be transplanting in here in a few minutes. That's 3 rosemary plants on the left, and the Japanese peppers, the Japanese sweet pepper shishito, on the right. They've grown very well. I've got some still in the house. I didn't want to bring them all out. I'm scared something might happen. We might get cold weather and I'll lose them. But the whole idea of having this hoop house is to try to push the season here as much as possible. So I can't resist. I'm going to start planting these things in the ground and hope for the best. But all the varieties that I'm putting in today, I still have some in reserve that won't be going in. So hopefully this will work out. These are 2 of the hot capsicum peppers that I overwintered in the house in front of a glass door. The first one on the right there is black pearl, capsicum black pearl. The one on the left that's very tall, even after having been cut back, I don't think it's even grown back as tall yet as it was last year. I don't know the name of it. It was just seed given to me from a lady from Alabama. Something that she had saved for years, and she didn't know the name of it. And I didn't manage to get any chilies on it last year, but it's come through the winter fine, and it's out here. It's also the one that I took the cutting from and rooted, and that's it in a little pot down at the base. It's now grown 4 or 5 inches on its own, so I'm going to put it in the ground today too. I have two more in the house, one of the tall one and one of the black pearl, that I just kept in the basement all winter, let them go dormant. They lost their leaves, so they are sort of in reserve. Once it's warm enough to be outside here, I'm going to bring them out and plant them in the garden to see if they leave out again. Next to that is a bay laurel. That won't be planted in here, but it likes the heat, so I may eventually put it in a larger pot in here. It's 2 or 3 years old now, and it grows slowly, but it's got new leaves coming on it right now. And next to that are my cachofi artichokes, 3 of them. The one on the left is the better of the 3. It's the one that did not get started in a jiffy pot. The other 2, of course, have struggled to get out through the walls of a jiffy pot. As you've heard me say before, I hate jiffy pots. And they're looking a little collapsed right now. It's the first time they've been out in the hoopos. I've watered them, got to water them again, make sure they stay good and wet, but the sudden sun and heat has sort of knocked them for a loop, but I'm sure they will come back overnight and adjust quite easily. Well, the tulips are starting to bloom, and they're still being watched by the plant cam. I think that just about finishes this little tour. I'm going to start planting some things in here now, and I'll show you that once I've finished planting the peppers and whatever. Well, if you watched a couple of videos ago, you saw me plant some of the cool weather crops, cabbage, broccoli, kohlrabi, that sort of thing, in some trays. And I think the germination on it so far has been quite good. I'm still keeping a little plastic dome over it because some of them haven't come up yet. Some of the varieties aren't up, and I'm not surprised. Celery for one, and it takes 2 or 3 weeks for celery to germinate. Well, that finishes my planting in here for today, just as well, because right now it's a lot like working in a sauna in here. I think next time I plant I'll choose a cloudy day. There's the 2 larger hot peppers, capsicums, set in the soil, and that's the little one there that I grew from a cutting. And down the side here I've got 3 or 4 varieties of sweet peppers. The first one are California Wonder, seeds given to me by Diane Munn, thank you. Next to that is called Fat and Sassy. Those are another sweet bell pepper, seeds that I bought from Vessie's here in the Atlantic region. And then up here are 3 sweet pickle, smaller bell peppers for pickling, also seeds given to me by Diane. And down here I put 3 of the shishito, Japanese sweet peppers. Those are seeds given to me by Gary in Germany. I have to differentiate between Gary in Germany and Gary in Washington State. Anyway, thank you very much, Gary. They germinated so quickly and they're growing beautifully. I'm looking forward to tasting them later in the summer. My plans for this bed, set this thing down and make it a little more steady. My plans for this bed are to have a row of peppers and eggplant running down both sides, and down the center there would be 7 tomato plants, all indeterminate tall tomatoes. I'm growing 7 different varieties, and I plan to put 1 of each in here to see how they do, and hopefully get a ripe tomato before fall, which is normal for around here. Our evenings and nights are so cold in the summertime that tomatoes take a long time to ripen here. I didn't have to put any extra compost in when I was doing these transplants. This is a bed that hasn't been used yet, and last year when I built the bed last fall, I put many sacks of sheep manure compost in, plus the bedding mix itself is a nice rich mix. So I did add some of the 444 organic fertilizer and some of the glacial rock dust to each location. And I must remember tomorrow to come out and take the memory card out of the plant cam and make sure that it still can see the tulips down at the end of the row. I'm quite sure that it can. I don't think that capsicum is in the way, but it would be silly to keep it going if it wasn't looking at what I wanted it to look at. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'm sorry about the length of this particular video. I had a feeling once I got started this might turn out to be a long one, but I hope you enjoyed it, and come back to see future updates. Thank you.